Uddhava Gita, Canto 11, Chapter 9, Text 21. This is Uddhava Brahman, otherwise known as Dattatreya by name, according to our acharyas. It doesn't say that in the text, but they have reached that conclusion. When you're in samadhi, you can understand things that the rest of us can't understand. There's reference to Canto 2, Chapter 7, where a list of incarnations is presented. Dattatreya is in that list, and in the verse, it says, Shukadeva Goswami says that Dattatreya spoke transcendental knowledge to several people. One of them is King Yadu. And based on that authority, and whatever other realizations they have, this is Dattatreya speaking to King Yadu. And you can see from the image on the screen here, there's a spider and a spider web. All of this section that we've been reading is one of the Avadhuta Brahman's gurus, and that's a spider. He's learning knowledge and detachment and attachment to the personality of Godhead by learning from the spider. It's not like the spider had a conversation, but he's learning by observing. And that's it's one of the valid sources of knowledge. Of course, for us, such sources need to be confirmed by Shastra, but after all, he's Dattatreya. So we've been hearing about stages of creation, stages of withdrawing the creation, the energies involved, in Pradhan and Mahatattva and so forth and so on. Sarva, that's not going to be so great because your back is right to Prabhupada. Can you help him move the chair? It's not good if your back is to Prabhupada. Thanks. Okay. So at the end of the class yesterday, there was a little discussion about metaphor. And we use metaphors. The Avadhuta Brahman is using metaphor, and Krishna's citing him. Metaphor is limited. Metaphor is meant to indicate some degree of similarity between something known and something unknown. It's meant to shed light or illuminate something that's unknown. So something that's unknown is the source of everything. And the relationship between the source of everything and everything that comes from that source. There's similarities with metaphor. The teaching is a simile or metaphor is as good as the number of common points. Recognizing there's some dissimilar between the thing that's known and the thing that's unknown. So you see on the screen, there's a spider. Jiva Goswami explains this example that's in more than one place in the Bhagavatam, the relationship between God and the universe. We mentioned this, but a spider has to eat something and Krishna doesn't have to eat something. He's Swarat. He's the independent Lord. But there is some similarity in the metaphor of the spider and the web. And that is, it comes from his body, he moves around it for some time, whatever he does, and then he withdraws it, or at least can. And Krishna does, and we heard how he does it. He does it through the time energy. So now we're going on to text 21, and the verse. Here, the word urnam is used instead of sutram. Sutram meant thread. Urnam also means thread, and so forth. Translation. Just as from within himself the spider expands thread through his mouth, plays with it for some time, and eventually swallows it. Similarly, the Supreme Personality Godhead expands his personal potency from within himself. Thus, the Lord displays the network of cosmic manifestation, utilizes it according to his purpose, and eventually withdraws it completely within himself. Here is Bhaktisiddhanta's translation. Just as from within himself the spider manifests thread through its mouth, plays with it for some time, and eventually withdraws it within itself, the Supreme Lord creates this universe from his own self, utilizes it for some time, and then he eventually withdraws it within his own self. The BBT purport reads, very short, one who is intelligent obtains spiritual knowledge even from an insignificant creature like the spider. Spiritual knowledge. Thus, transcendental knowledge is visible everywhere for one whose eyes are opened in Krishna consciousness. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta's purport. The spirit souls wander about in this temporary world, which was created by the supersoul. Just as a spider manifests thread from its body and then again winds it up within himself, the Supreme Lord creates this temporary material world, which is a manifestation of his inferior energy, and then again winds it up. This temporary material world is under the control of time. It is limited, and it is full of miseries, which we learned from the previous chapters. The commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is glossed in the following way by Bhaktisiddhanta. The word urna nabhi, urna nabhi. What's nabhi mean? Navel, right? And urna nabhi indicates a spider, that from which the thread comes. A spider releases threads from her heart through her mouth, creates a web and plays on it. Then again, it swallows the entire web. In the same way, the Supreme Lord creates the entire universe from his own self, and then, after enjoying his pastimes, again withdraws it within his own self. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary is much shorter. Urna nabhi means a spider. The spider produces a thread from its mouth. And after playing, vihritya withdraws it. And Jiva Goswami, in his Krama Sandarbha, gives the following translation in short purport. Just as from within himself the spider expands thread through his mouth, plays with it for some time, and eventually swallows it, similarly the Supreme Lord produces the universe and then withdraws it. And the commentary from Krama Sandarbha is, the spider is taken as guru to illustrate a particular feature. The spider produces a thin thread from its mouth and then withdraws it. And now here's a long one, a really long one. This is our dear Jiva Goswami in Bhagavad Sandarbha Anuchhed 40, because we heard from the earlier verses, Anuched 39, this is 40. Bhagavad Sandarbha is elaborating on the potencies of Bhagavan and how he does what he does. Now, we're reading this because it's on the topic, and also specifically because this morning's verse is in his commentary on Bhagavad Sandarbha, Anuched 40. And the section that he's commenting on is not, the launching point is not Uddhava Gita. The launching point is Krishna's discussions with Brahma after the Brahma Vimohan Leela, and Brahma is offering prayers. Chapter 14, Canto 10. Brahma is offering prayers, and in those prayers, Jiva Goswami is understanding Krishna, hearing his prayers, is having some contemplation or response to his prayers, although it's not in the verses. At this point, Sri Krishna might raise the following objection: my dear Brahma, how is it you have come to this conclusion? It is not possible for my form to be all-pervading. My form is composed of various material elements, just like an earthen pot or other material substances seen in this world. How is it that you say my form is otherwise? How is it that you say my form is spiritual? You may have become a little bewildered seeing some wonderful opulence here, but I assure you, you perfectly understand me. You completely know the full extent of my powers. As far as the transformation of these boys and calves into four-armed Vishnu forms, which you have just seen, it has happened somehow or other because of the expansion of some unknown person. But I have certainly nothing to do with this magical display. Furthermore, all these forms are spiritual, full of knowledge and unlimited bliss. And all these human-like forms appeared at the same moment. And there were so many of them, and you did not see all of them. How is it possible for a little cowherd boy like me to manifest so many spiritual forms all at the same time? I'm not the cause of this wonderful thing. Anticipating that Krishna might say that, Brahma said, 10:14:21, oh, great, oh, supreme great one, oh, supreme personality of Godhead, oh, super soul master of all mystic power, your pastimes are taking place continuously in these worlds. But who can estimate where, how, and when you are employing your spiritual energy and performing your pastimes? No one can understand the mystery of these activities. In this verse, the one just read, text 21 from chapter 14, Brahma is saying, "O Lord, your pastimes are taking place continuously, kativa, in these worlds, trilokyam. But who can estimate where, how, and when you're employing your spiritual energy? Yogamaya Vistarayan. Vistarayan. Vistara means transformation. It's a similar word to what we heard before. Shakti Parinama. The world is a transformation of Krishna's energies. So Krishna is manifesting those forms that Brahma saw similarly by his spiritual energy and performing his pastimes. No one can understand the mystery of these activities. Commentary. No one can completely understand Lord Krishna. This is also confirmed in the following statement of Kena Upanishad. Quote, one who thinks he understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not actually understand him. But one who knows that he does not actually understand the Lord is actually aware of the nature of the Supreme Person. So that's relieving, isn't it? In the previous 4 verses, Brahma has explained that Sri Krishna is, by nature, inconceivable. In this verse, he explains why the Lord is inconceivable by addressing him with the word Bhuman, which means, O Lord, who appears in innumerable different forms. This means that although the Supreme Personality of God has one principal form, he also appears in innumerable other transcendental forms. This is Bhagavad Sandarbha. Lord has unlimited forms, Bhuman. This is confirmed by the following statement of the Bhagavatam 10:47, where Kura prays to Sri Krishna. I offer my obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who, although he originally appears in a single transcendental form, has expanded into innumerable other transcendental forms. Confirmed, he has many forms. The Shruti Shastra also says, quote, although he is one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seen to appear in many different transcendental forms. He's, lawyer building his case. And so the Lord has unlimited forms. This is part of the tattva of Bhagavan. And he has unlimited potencies too. The Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in different forms according to the way in which he is worshipped. This is confirmed by the following statement of Madhva Madhvacharya. In his commentary on Vedanta Sutra 3.5.52, quote, the personality of Godhead appears in different forms according to the way in which his devotees worship him. The following example may be given in this regard. Interesting example. This is a metaphor example. A silken garment may be fashioned with many different colors in an intricate design, just as a peacock feather is decorated with many colors. If one looks at a specific part of such a garment, he may see a specific color. And if one looks at another part of the garment, he may see another color. If one looks at the entire garment at once, he will see the garment as a whole. In this example, Sri Krishna is the entire garment. And when he is partially manifest, this is known as the various incarnations of Godhead. Very nice explanation. Very easy to understand. I was viewing one of the on Ramayana Day. There was a class, recorded class now on YouTube, where someone was asking during question and answer, in ISKCON and our Gaudiya Vaishnavas commonly refer to Ram as being green, as in like freshly hewn grass. However, there are other references where he's spoken of as being blackish. How to understand? And this very same explanation was given, the Madhva Muni explanation. The Lord appears according to the devotion, and he can appear to one, simultaneously he can appear to one person as darkish, another as greenish, because the Lord appears according to the devotion of his devotee. Stepping back from that, we're very happy to accept the form of Lord Ramachandra has the color that Valmiki sees. So we're fine with that. But if somebody else over there sees differently, the Lord's just reciprocating with him. And it doesn't have to mean there are different days of Brahma, and in different days of Brahma he appears like this and appears like that. It can be the same day of Brahma. It can be the same form of the Lord who appears differently according to the beholder. That's something we should understand. It's not easy, but the silken garment example is nice. In this verse, the jewel referred to is Vaidurya stone, parentheses, lapis lazuli. What's the Vaidurya stone? It appears to be separated in different colors. Vaidurya stone. When the Vaidurya stone is placed near something, it appears color of that something. The Vaidurya stone is placed near another something, it appears to be that color of that other something. It's the nature of Vaidurya stone. So the Lord is like that. I mean, he is who he is. He's the source of everything. But he appears to others according to their mood. It's similar. The words Nila Pita Dibihi refers to the various transcendental attributes of the Lord. This explanation of various forms of the Lord reveals the meaning of the word kva, or where. In the previously quoted statement of Lord Brahma, that's the one we just read, text 21, chapter 14. He has various attributes, and those various attributes appear differently to various beholders of those attributes, or some features more this and some another feature is more that. He's the source of everything, and people have different regard for him, so they see according. And he reveals, and they have realizations, and they describe. The Supreme Lord's expansion in the forms of the various incarnations manifested from his single original form is described in the following statement of Srimad Bhagavatam 8:18-12, where Shukadeva Goswami describes the form of Vamana incarnation. Quote, the Lord appeared in his original form with ornaments and weapons in his hands. Although this ever-existing form is not visible in the material world, he nonetheless appeared in that form. Then, in the presence of his father and mother, he assumed the form of Vamana, a dwarf brahmana, a brahmachari, just like a theatrical actor. We normally don't focus on that fact, but similar to Krishna appearing in the prison house of Kamsa, he appeared in a certain form, and then at their appeal, he assumed a childlike form. No problem. So which is Vamana's form, this one or that one? They're both. And they're all those forms are within the original source. In this verse, Shukadeva Goswami explains that the Lord first appeared in his original form, Vapu, which is not a manifestation expanded from any other form of Godhead, but is originally existing and has no other forms as its origin. That form is spiritual, chit, and full of perfect and complete transcendental bliss, and that form is manifested with ornaments and weapons in his hand. Vibhushana Yudhai. The Lord appeared in this original form in the material world, Vyaktam Ardharayat. After this original form was manifested, the Lord assumed the form of a Brahmana dwarf, a brahmachari. The verse has, it's important, this just part of the Sanskrit is Tenaiva Vamano Vatur Babhuva Hari. So Tena and Eva. The word Eva certainly emphasizes that this was the form of the Lord. He assumed. He did not assume any other form at that time. Next, one may ask, under what circumstances did the Lord appear as the Vamana incarnation? The answer is given in this verse with the word sampashyataho. The Lord appeared as Vamana in the presence of his parents, Kashyapa and Aditi. The question may be asked, what is the nature of the Lord's form? The answer is given in the word divya gatihi. His movements are wonderful. Divya means supremely inconceivable, and gati means movements or pastimes. The Lord's forms and pastimes are all eternal, although sometimes they may be seen by the living entities and sometimes they cannot be seen. That the Lord's forms are eternal is confirmed by the following statements of Shruti Shastra. Quote, the personality of Godhead existed in the past, he exists in the present, and he will continue to exist in the future eternally. In this connection, in order to give an example of how the Supreme Lord assumes the forms of his various incarnations, thus manifesting certain features of his original form, Shukadeva Goswami says, this Canto 8 verse, the Lord assumed the form of Vamana, just like a theatrical actor, unquote. In this comparison of the Lord to an actor, here's another metaphor, Shukadeva Goswami notes that the Lord is a wonderful actor, Divya Gatihi, and the gestures of his hands and movements of his body will fill the audience with wonder. Although the Lord appears in his various incarnations, he may seem to be an ordinary human being or demigod. In truth, he never suffers the material miseries, which are the everyday experiences of the conditioned souls, and he is never imperfect in any way. And this is all a build-up, as far as we're concerned, to this morning's verse, text 21 from chapter 9, Uddhava Gita. The personality of Godhead is supremely independent. For example, he creates the various material universes without any external help, just as a spider constructs a web from the saliva within its own body. This is described in the following statement of this morning's Bhagavatam verse. As a spider creates a web with saliva from within its mouth and then, having created it, again swallows it, so does the Supreme Personality of Godhead create and again swallow the material worlds. Back to the various forms of the Lord. I hope you, not too long. In the following verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 3.9.11, Brahma explains that the personality of Godhead appears in the forms of as many different incarnations according to the different ways the devotees approach him. This is adding to the Mahamuni example. They see according to their faith, and then they see, or he reveals himself according to their service, their approach, their submission. 3.9.11 reads, "O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you." It's important. In this verse, the word pranayase means you manifest. We may note that by saying shutekshita pataha, that is, the devotees learn about the Lord by hearing the bona fide descriptions of him in the Vedic scriptures, Brahma confirms the reality of the Supreme Lord's transcendental forms. In other words, the Lord's forms are not the product of the meditator's imagination. They actually exist. Almost done. Some may say he's very open to dealing with the arguers or those who have different opinion. He very openly and accurately expresses the differing opinions and then addresses them. Some may say that the various forms of the personality of God do not delight the devotees. This false concept is refuted by the following statement of Srimad Bhagavatam 3.24.31, where Kardamuni addresses the Supreme Personality of God in the following words. This is Kapila Dev he's addressing. "My dear Lord, although you have no material form, you have your own innumerable forms. They truly are your transcendental forms which are pleasing to your devotees. This verse means, quote, whatever forms, Rupani, of you there are, these forms please your devotees. The word Abhi Rupani means the Lord only accepts forms that are suitable. He never accepts any unsuitable form. Suitable means, according to the devotee, that's suitable. The Lord may sometimes accept forms that appear to be unsuitable. An example of this is when he assumed an apparently abominable material form before King Rantidev. That this form was abominable and material is, of course, an illusion. This form is described in the following words, Srimad Bhagavatam 9:21, 2015, quote, demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, who can satisfy all material ambitions, all materially ambitious men by giving them the rewards they desire, then manifested their own identities before King Rantidev, for it was they who had presented themselves as the Brahmana, Sudra, Chandala, and so on. You got it? Kuvera? It's clear? They're demigods and they assumed forms that are not so nice. And it wasn't attractive and appealing to King Rantidev. But he was charitable towards them in any case. Sridhar Swami comments on this verse, quote, the word Tribhuvanandisha means Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Vishnu. And the word Maya means that in order to examine how patient and tolerant Maharaj Rantidev was, the Lord, with the assistance of his bewildering Maya potency, assumed the form of Brahman, Shudra, and Chandala. The reason the Lord never accepts an unpleasant form is given by the word Arupinaha, which means he who never accepts a material form. Sridhar Swami comments, because the Lord never accepts an abominable form, his forms are never material. So that was kind of like icing and cherries and sprinkled stuff on top of the cake. But back to our spider example. Here's the text that it's illustrating. Shri Shri Radha Leela Madhava Ki. Right. Just as from within himself the spider expands thread through his mouth, plays with it for some time, and eventually swallows it. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands his personal potency from within himself. Thus, the Lord displays the network of cosmic manifestation, utilizes it according to his purpose, and eventually withdraws it completely within himself. The metaphor is very helpful in understanding the relationship or sambandha gyan between the Lord and the creation. And people ask, if God is good and God is great, why does he make a place where people suffer? And that topic, very common. Different ways of expressing it, but it's, a spider, the saliva that comes from his body is not attractive. Anyway, it's a whole other topic. Why there's suffering, why does God arrange things so that there's suffering? He could arrange things differently. That question. But the relationship is, it's his separated energies. It is under his control, But he's not taking responsibility for the misuse of free will of the living entities. He's giving them according to their liking. And then now we're going back to that form that if through the knowledge and detachment process, one can then fix one's attention on what's behind the temporary. Through detachment from the temporary and trying to be the enjoyer of it, one's mind then becomes free to contemplate what's behind the forms of the Lord, the source, and make that spiritual connection. Okay. Let's see if there's some discussion. Shyam Sundar back there, right behind you.
Maharaj, all the living being has a particular relationship with Krishna.
Yeah.
He accepts the service and he reciprocate.
Yes.
But my question to you is, Krishna become more pleased when you render the service in that eternal your rasa?
When you hand over service, does Krishna become more pleased when you do what?
Render the
Render
service
service
in your particular rasas
compared to what?
compared to any other services. So every one of us has some particular ras that Krishna wants to enjoy from us. So unless and until we know which service that our eternal swarup is that we should render, then Krishna become more pleased. Is it a right understanding?
It's a very interesting way to express a right understanding. What Krishna is pleased by is the love and devotion. And how let's hook somebody up to a love and devotion meter. And supposing they don't yet know, like all of us, what our eternal spiritual position is. So Krishna is going to be less pleased with us than one who does know, although both are rendering service according to their capacity. Now, one can say yes and one can say no, and they're both right. And they're both right in the sense that because we've been discussing Ramayana so much, Lord Ram and Lord Krishna accept service from anybody. Putana, or in Ram's case, the squirrel, or a vulture, etc. Anyone. Rakshasa, anyone. So the Lord is accepting the service from anyone. And he's pleased by that offering of service. Let's just take a worldly example of a parent with children. Supposing one child, I know some families like this, one child is particularly mischievous. And then there's another child or children that are particularly very affectionate. Now, there's natural affection that goes to the child that's affectionate. But when the mischievous child also shows affection, which is the parent more pleased with the first than the second? You can say yes and you can say no. Because when there is that sign of the mischievous child and distracted child and whatever, exhibiting some genuine affection in the midst of all the other mischief and all the other stuff, it's also very pleasing. And so the parent is going to encourage both. In the higher sense, we'll go to the other side. The other side is, who can please Krishna like the residents of Vrindavan? Now, they're persons, living entities situated in their eternal position in relation to Krishna that aren't in Vrindavan. And as Krishna is pleased with them, those who are in some other situation than the Vrindavan mood, as with the residents in Vrindavan, although it's their natural position. You follow what I'm saying here? So you can say yes and no.
The question came in my mind because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that even though you may be expert to perform some activity, but if it's not your natural duty, you should not perform that
But
activity.
that's from the material perspective. One has a psychophysical nature, and you should do your duty according to your psychophysical nature, which is different than your sarup, your actual spiritual identity.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Up front here, you have something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I just had a comment, or yeah, a comment kind of adding to the point of Krishna showing different forms according to the relationship of the devotee. And I've been recently hearing in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita when Gopakumar was in the Vaikuntha planets, and he was seeing Lord Narayana and as Lord Gopal, and then with the cowherd boys around him serving him, although nobody else was able to see in that same mood, but it was being exhibited to him just to reciprocate.
Yeah. And then further, when he sees different living entities entering into Vaikuntha that have all kinds of different forms, they have different forms. And they see the Lord according to their devotion also. They don't see what, they see what they see. He reveals of his form accordingly. Yes.
So adding on that comment, I had a question. So is this how the Lord can be said to have infinite forms? Because each individual worshiper with their relationship, he reveals maybe like even a slight variation. Sorry, Maharaj.
The Lord has infinite forms because each devotee has a particular inclination.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
So is that the case? Because the Lord reveals even maybe like a slight variation in his appearance to each devotee.
It's as above, so below. In below, supposing there's an event, and different people are going to report that event differently, and that they're reporting their experience. And so, as above, the classic example is Krishna walking into the wrestling arena of Kamsa. And how did people see him? Differently. And even amongst those categories, there's differences of how they saw him. I mean, what does death personified look like? Etc. What does, the Brahman effulgence look like? Anyway. Variety. One entity. One form. Revealing to others according. So there's their perception, but it's a reciprocation with their perception or their heart. That we need to understand is Krishna's nature. It's not just our subjectivity, it's Krishna reciprocating with the hearts of that's the transcendental position, different than the material one. Let's go to online.
One question from Shriya Devidasi. There are many inconceivable potencies along with creation. Why is there so much emphasis on material creation?
It's just a section of the Bhagavatam. It's not the totality of the Bhagavatam. There's a lot because it's important to understand it, to understand the relationship between that which we're constantly in touch with, and not in the mood of enjoyment, but in the mood of this is Krishna's property, etc. That knowledge and detachment is essential to understand transcendence. And there's lots of transcendence in the Bhagavatam. I mean, just like what we read. All these different descriptions in Bhagavad Sandarbha about understanding the forms of the Lord and so forth. That's a lot of transcendence. Go ahead. That's it.
So I had a follow-up question based on Doug's question. That so if many people see Krishna, they perceive him in a different way, and it's a reciprocation from Krishna. Then I was wondering, is there anything that stays the same, that regardless of who sees him, is there something that is, it's like, is there one absolute thing that everyone sees regardless of their relationship?
He has a flute and a peacock feather and beautiful eyes.
For example, is a different bodily color. So
That's unusual.
Okay.
The general description is what the general description is. But what about when somebody sees something other than the general description? Is that mythology, or is it hocus pocus, or what is it? Sarva, you always have something. You got something this morning? No. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.